think it was a Civil War general or admiral told somebody. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
It's a good looking cup you got, Dr. Fuller.
Well, all the best people have these.
I've heard that.
Including with your name available, laser engraved.
Mm-hmm. Good morning, Warrior Nation. This is your old pal, Rich Brown. Today I'm once again joined by my partner in crime, Dr. T.C. Fuller. If you are new to the show, Dr. T.C. Fuller is a retired FBI agent, former Army officer, EOD officer, a professional firearms trainer, private investigator, author of many leather-bound volumes, including No Safe Alternatives, Empathy for the Devil, and A Painting Over Rust. So, Dr. Fuller, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing well, man. I had a good weekend. How about you?
I'm just ducky, and gotta be honest, I'm flattered to be following Simon Golob from the last broadcast.
That was a good one, I thought. I like Simon.
I'm in good company to be mentioned in the same breath, so I'm quite flattered.
Yeah, he's it was very cool that he let me be the first guy that got to interview him. So I appreciate that, Simon. And I got him coming back on, I think, end of the month. And then we're going to kind of take a deeper dive into handguns. What I like about Simon, and I said it on the show, is he's very opinionated, but he brings receipts with his opinions. You know, they're very thoughtful, very organized. And this is another thing about the FBI, man. I have never met a dummy who was an FBI agent. I'm sure you may have. With my experience, I have not.
Because there's so many people, and I talk about this in my book, Painting Over Rust, because there are so many people that apply to the Bureau, they can be rather selective. And testing for raw intelligence is fairly simple. So they can set that up as an early tripwire. So yeah, I agree with you. You don't tend to get people who are book dumb in the FBI. Now, I've met a couple, and I've worked for a couple who stubbed their toe on that threshold getting in. But Simon is not one of them. He married very well, too, by the way, if you ever get a chance to meet his wife, a lovely lady. My first exposure to Simon was after he'd gone through the academy, and he was out in the field. And I was at the academy teaching. And a bunch of the instructors there had very, very strong opinions about him, which was unusual because when a new agent comes through, it's just like basic trainees, right? They come, they go, they come, they go, they come, they go. Uh-huh. And, but a few of them had very strong opinions about him because he came in and just kicked over the apple cart in terms of his ability to shoot. Uh-huh. I mean, he showed up able to shoot much better than any of the instructors there, with one or two exceptions. And the exceptions, by the way, loved him, thought he was great.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of flack because I was also a competitive shooter when I got there. And so for whatever reason, a couple of those people that didn't like Simon because he could shoot and had opinions. And like you said, he could back them up with both, conversationally and let's take it to the range kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it spilled over on me, which was hysterical because I'm like, well, strap it on. We'll go out to the range. We'll see what happens. But I mean, if the guy's good, why don't we learn from him instead of vilifying him? So that was my first exposure to Simon.
Yeah. And if you're wondering who we're talking about, go back and watch last Friday's show, Simon Golub. Somebody was like, hey, that guy you had on, is he kin to or related to Julie Golub? I'm like, that's her husband. Like, oh, and that's what I told him. I was like, man, because if you look on Julie's, any of her social media, you'll probably never see a photograph of her husband. Obviously, he was doing the job, FBI agent. And now that he's retired a month or so ago, I'm like, this is your coming out party, right? Let's introduce the world to you. They probably know you a little bit from pistoltraining.com, know you by reputation, perhaps. But I wanted Friday's show to be kind of get to know you. And then we'll go into his thoughts on carbines, handguns, et cetera, because he's a phenomenal shooter and a very brilliant man.
That is going to be a absolute firearms power couple if they choose to go that route. And I've known Julie since, well, as far as I know, before Simon and her were involved. And my favorite Julie story is I was in Afghanistan and we were carrying Glocks there, and we had zero spare parts. I mean, nothing. The FBI gave us the guns, didn't give us the parts. And we didn't have, I was the only armorer there, and that was just by happenstance. So I was kind of maintaining some of the weapons, and I was griping, and I sent Julie an email because at the time she was shooting for Glock. I'm like, hey, can you or Dave Savigny was over there. Can you point me in the direction to buy some parts? I said, I need spare parts for our 17s. We don't have any. He says, well, what do you need? I said, well, the stuff that usually breaks is what I need because these guns are getting rode hard. And but just point me in the right direction. I'll pay for them. And the next thing I heard from Julie was a box of Glock spare parts showed up. A couple of barrels, a ton of springs, extractors, you name it, it was in there. And I could, if I had the frame and the slide, I could build the whole gun several times over. So, and wouldn't accept any money for it.
Wow.
Yeah, so,
when I was at Parris Island, some friends of mine were contractors in Afghanistan. They're like, we can't get freaking boots here, man. And I'm like, give me the sizes. What do you need? Because the recruits that wash out at Parris Island, and they are Legion.
Oh yeah.
It all goes to what we call quarter sales. I don't know what they call it in the Army, but
can't reissue it.
Exactly, because it's got some flunky recruit's name scrawled inside of it. So my boots to this day are here. They've got Private Schmuckatelli inside of them. But
well, when I was over there, the last story, the FBI just had a terrible supply chain, which was weird because the G5, the director's G5 flew in once a month. We would get donuts. We get all kinds of donuts from Krispy Kreme, but we trade that stuff. But I made friends with the Marine Corps supply officer, and of course the Marines couldn't get alcohol, but I could. I was a civilian, so I'd roll up into the UN compound and just buy till my heart was content. Well, I'll tell you what, you want to make trading profit in a war zone with General Order Number 1 in place, show up with a case of Foster's or a bottle of Jack. And so whenever the FBI guys needed stuff, I'd just roll over and see him. And, I guess combat loss covered a variety of sins.
That's weird.
It's so weird. It was a lot easier to get ammo and grenades than it was to get gear. But I have some boots in my closet right now that have an Eagle, Globe, and Anchor stamped in the side. Afghanistan dust in the tread. So
yeah. So, and I just told my buddy Rob, I said, just send me a list of what sizes you need. I'll have them in a box to you by the end of the week. And he's like, yeah, well, thanks, brother. What do we owe you? I'm like, you don't owe me shit, man. They're great boots, but when they're at quarter sales, they're being sold for like $10, $12 a pop. I'm like, wow. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
I got over there with a pair of boots that I'd worn in the first Gulf War. And so they were really well broken in. And I know I wore them for a year in Egypt. And, the treads were worn down on them. They were soft. And I tell you what, the first time I put on those Marine Corps issue boots, that were obviously a lot more up to date. And I was like, well, I'm sending these home. I sent my old ones back home. I just wore the Marine Corps boots the whole time. It's like wearing tennis shoes.
Oh, they're phenomenal.
Yeah, compared to what we were, the old black leather ones. I'm like, come on, man.
What did you wear in the first Gulf War, boot wise?
Boot wise, I don't know what they're called. I don't even know the name of them, but they're the tan Army issue boot. I mean, in my case, the suede's all worn off of them now. I got fuel from the Bradleys all over them and whatnot. Other biological material ground into it. But I couldn't tell you the name of them. I'd have to go look.
Interesting.
There's my box.
I wore Israeli commando boots.
Oh, well, can't hide money. Look at this guy.
Well, yeah, I went to Saigon Sam's right outside the base, and I wear a size 11, and they didn't have size 11. They had size 12, and I'm like, so I went to war with boots that really, and we had one really long hump. It was it was probably the worst hump of my life. Let's go real quick on the story here, but it was getting ready for the ground. We're like, okay, well, if the freaking vehicles break down, we're gonna have to do a foot movement of unknown distance kind of thing. And so we took off in the middle of the night, and the sand over there is not like sand here. It's not real powdery. Yeah. And those Israeli boots were great, but because it was just too big, it turned out to be just brutal. Yeah. Plus the mental aspect of, I don't know when we're stopping. Right. We're just going to hump all night, and we pretty much did, and it was awful. I
rolled into Ranger School with 2 pair of boots that I had never worn. That was a bad mistake. Now, within a month, they were both near destroyed. They were great, but that first week was hell, just absolute hell. It tore my feet to shit. And of course, you can't say anything because as soon as you do, you're
Yeah.
recycled at best or rolled out completely. So I was like, nope, feet are fine. Feet are fine.
Are you a first lieutenant or second lieutenant?
I was a second lieutenant then. Yeah, I was just barely still a second lieutenant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Fuller, we got Derek on. He says, good morning from North Carolina. Bruce is on. He's coin number 481. No sales pitch this morning. Click the links in today's show notes. Find out if you want to become a member of the American Warrior Society. If you don't, that's not a problem. I'm not the boss of you. Neither is Dr. Fuller. Tony is on.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, Tony is on. Says, good morning, folks. Will is on. Says, good morning, Rich and Dr. Fuller. Coin number 2269 from Missouri. Our good friend Walt Davis is on up there in Ohio. Ed Scarborough is on. One of my old Marine buddies. Good morning, sir. Mark Hamilton is on. Let's see. Tony says, Saigon Sam's for the win. LOL. Haven't heard that in a minute. Yeah. Good morning. Gregory Cruz is on. Semper Fi, brother. He is up there in Rhode Island when he's not overseas doing God's work. He says, good morning, gentlemen. Coin number 1928. I've got a really interesting show for you. We're going to kind of talk about Jeff Denning's 20 rules for winning gunfights. And I put Rich Beowulf Brown. This is a true story, Dr. Fuller. I type my name and I start to write Brown, and I swear to God, it starts coming out Beowulf.
All right.
Is that not the weirdest damn thing?
Yeah. Well, no, I see it. I see it. You're old enough to be a Beowulf contemporary.
All right, guys. Good morning. Thanks for being on the show. Dr. Fuller, we'll talk to you later.
What was his opponent's name? Grundig? What was the monster's name in Beowulf?
Great question. I don't know.
It's been a while since I read it. So
Michael Gentili, my good friend, is on. But yeah, I was like, Beowulf. I mean, where in my brain did that come from? So anyway,
spell check.
I thought it was funny.
Autocorrect.
So I'm ambushing Dr. Fuller this morning, which is a good thing for a gunfight, because he had no idea what we're going to be talking about. And neither did I when I woke up this morning, to be fully candid. And I'm like, people seem to love these top 20 lists. So I found this on the interwebs, and full credit. These are Jeff Denning's thoughts. He's a solid guy. Check out the links in today's show notes, and you can read the article for yourself. But number one, man, he says, be prepared to use deadly force. What do you think about this being like the number one on his top 20?
It's right up there with the first rule of a gunfight: have a gun. And it's, I think, and I make the case in my book that you discussed earlier in the show. You have to think about this. You have
no safe alternative. Is that
I'm sorry. I should have said the title. Yes, no safe alternative available from Amazon. Great Father's Day gift or Christmas gift for those near you.
That's exactly right.
But it's one of those things where, okay, yeah, I can put 5 rounds in 5 seconds in a 2-inch circle at 5 yards. I can do that every day from the draw, and I'm great at it. Okay. But if you can't drop the hammer on another human being, all you're doing is you've become a loot drop. Yeah. I've told the story on the show before. I had a really good friend up in Vermont, and he was a really good shooter. Carried a Wilson Combat 1911. Guy could run that thing like a house on fire. And we were doing a course with Dave Spalding one time, and we were shooting the kind of life-size silhouette targets. They always remind me of the old Soviet targets we had on the ranges, on the pop-up ranges. And David put T-shirts on these things, and my buddy was shooting it. And at the end of that day, he's like, I can't do this. He says, like, it occurred to him for the first time that he was training to shoot another human being when he saw these human-shaped targets. And he sold me his 1911, and to my knowledge, in the last 25 years, he hasn't shot a round.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't prepared to use deadly force. But God love him, he realized it before he found himself in that position.
I have a friend I've mentioned on the show innumerable times, but I think it's so important because it speaks to this. Somebody shattered in his back sliding glass. He's got a wife and 2 children, good Christian man, great BJJ guy. And he grabs his gun off the nightstand and he rolls into his living room, and there stands probably a late teens female meth head with a handgun. And he's like, I just was not prepared to kill this woman. I had never thought I might have to kill a female, a young, relatively attractive, methed out female, even though the female was standing between me and his flesh and blood children. And I mean, no disrespect to this guy. No. It's just one of those things. So to his point, says, be prepared to stop a coworker, a neighbor, a teammate, a friend, or even a relative.
Yeah. And it's it's funny how little that attention that gets in the training world.
Mm-hmm.
It gets very, very little attention. And I talk about it in my again, in No Safe Alternative, I talk about an engagement I got into with a person I think was about 15, give or take. I mean, it's hard to tell given the nutrition levels and everything. That's the one that haunts me. It's the only one that haunts me, and it bothers me to this day. If I have dreams, that's what I dream about, because I wasn't prepared for that at all. You know, someone looks like you, someone looks like me. Okay. You know, but a kid, we don't think about that. But a kid with a gun is just as deadly as a grown-up with a gun.
Absolutely. Perhaps more so.
Yeah.
Because their frontal lobe is not fully developed. They're not thinking rationally.
What's worse, a baby copperhead or a fully grown copperhead?
Exactly.
So it doesn't get enough attention in the training circles, and I think that's a mistake on our part. I mean, it impacts police officers, right? I mean, they're not prepared to use deadly force. I mean, the Kyle Dinkiller video is an excellent example. I mean, it's a tragic example, but it's an excellent example at this point. And you know, the grill camera videos that we have are rife with examples where the police officer gets there, and despite all the training and the years of experience, when that moment comes, when the flag flies, they simply were not prepared to do it.
Yeah. I won't go into too much detail on it, but probably 5 years ago, I had a relative at a lake house, a friend's lake house, punch me in the face. And so, you know, in the moment, you don't need to, the why is not important. Now, you know, I don't want to, because of my grappling ability, I took him down, took a superior position, and held him until his senses began to regain themselves, because he had had some booze, you know, and I knew it wasn't in his right mind. But my point is, like, I didn't see it coming, you know, and I say that just to say this is very important. Whether you're prepared to use deadly force or any level of force, think it through. It may be your bride or whatever who has an episode. Do we need to use deadly force? Maybe not, if you have the ability to use some other level of force before it comes to that.
We've talked about it before, right? The more you know, the less you have to carry. Well, if you don't know how to grapple, and you don't have pepper spray, and you don't have the relevant information you need to, say, see the attack coming, you know, the pre-fight indicators, well, your options become more increasingly limited.
Yeah. Moving on to number 2, have a plan to kill everyone you meet. Sometimes this elicits, as it did with you, a chuckle. But when you think about like the concept of left to bang, and I've interviewed the guys who developed that over at Arcadia Cognerati, who developed the idea of a combat hunter program and all the other stuff that goes along with that. And the way, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's like when you walk into rooms, like, does lethal force need to be used on anybody in here? Not that this is a conscious thought so much as just an unconscious realization that, okay, then I can come down a little bit and now start just a deliberate scan. But you know, does anybody need to be rendered lethal force in this room? No. Okay, cool.
The reason that one makes me laugh is because it's in every list. It's on T-shirts. It's, you know, Chaos 6 gets credit for that a lot. But when you boil it down, it's true. I mean, yes. I don't think you should run around your life, you know, with one hand on your weapon, going from piece of cover to piece of cover to piece of cover, right? You don't want to live like that. But something like being prepared mentally, having a plan, looking over a room, you can do that. You can incorporate that into your life and still be a normal person, right? You're not, you know, Tactical Timmy going everywhere with your mollied out backpack and your look like a 511 catalog exploded on you as you're just looking for a fight. And apologies to anybody who chooses to dress that way. But, you know, this is something you can do. It just basically is telling you to turn your brain on. Right? When you're out and about, turn your brain on and pay attention to what's going on. And look for those pre-fight indicators. Look for somebody who's acting oddly, you know, baseline the environment you're in, and then look for those outliers and have a plan. You know, if you don't have a plan, you're planning. What is it? Failure to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah. I had at close combat instructor school, the head instructor said, he was talking about that, you know, never underestimate anyone, have a plan to to use force on every single person you see. He goes, if an old lady wants to go, she gets a ticket to ride all the rides. I'm not like, she's a little old lady. No, you want to step up to me. You want to threaten me with, that higher level of force. You're getting everything I got. Funny side note, one of the, a guy that was in that course with me, absolute stud. I won't say his name, but I'd seen him. He was a force recon dude. And then later on, I saw, Master Gunny, I'll say his last name, Oates. Okay. Master Gunny Oates is won the best Ranger competition. That's weird for a Marine Master Gunnery sergeant to win that. And then I saw a guy, a former Delta guy. I was like, Oates was one of the first Marines that made it into Delta. And I'm like, no kidding. I'm not surprised. The dude was an absolute beast that you did not want to, they would put you in these sandbagged enclosures, like drop you in, and you're just like fighting in a phone booth, and you didn't want to be in the phone booth with that cat. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, I think it's also important to your point there is the concept of proportionality, because we aren't in combat zones. We are in the United States legal system, and you should know what the laws are. And one thing is, your grandmother comment. Yeah, if she pulls a gun, then it's on. But she hits you with an umbrella. Obviously, you can't have a plan. You might have a plan to kill her, but you can't execute that plan.
Exactly.
The response still has to be proportional. Do you ever see the video of Pinky the cat?
I don't think so.
I gotta send that to you. It's available on YouTube. Just look up Pinky the cat. It's quite old now. It's probably 20, 30 years old. But it's a guy from an adoption center. He's outside. He's got this cat on a leash. You know what I'm talking about now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's Pinky the cat. And he's trying to make a pitch for why you should adopt this cat. He's a real sweetheart of a cat. And whatever reason, the cat just decides, you know what, not today, pal. And the cat just commences to tearing him up. And at first the guy's trying to be gentle and calm and just kind of, the cat is all in and ends up biting him on the inside of the thigh, clamps onto him with all its claws. It's not the size of the fight or the size of the cat in the fight, apparently. It's the size of the fight in the cat. And that's something to keep in mind, too, to the point we've made on these last two bullets. Size, age is relevant, but tools and mindset are also relevant. Have your plan.
No, well said. Action's faster than reaction, man. If someone's pointing a gun at you, you must act fast. He can pull the trigger anytime he wants. You be DRT, dead right there. I'm telling you, he says never ever get in a Mexican standoff. I talk about one in my book. Another Marine pointed a gun at me in a combat zone, and his name was I think Robert or Rodney Parker. No, that's the guy I killed. I can't remember his name now. I wrote it. It's in the book. Anyway, I'm waking him up for I watch. He didn't want to get up, and he ends up pointing his loaded rifle at me out of his bag, and I swiveled around him and pointed my loaded rifle at him. We were kind of this weird, bizarre two Marines pointing loaded guns at each other, standoff for a minute. But, it goes back to, I never thought this would happen. And yet here we are. And then less than 6 months later, he killed two Marines at Camp Lejeune. And I was on the death row for a long time, but now it's been commuted to life without possibility of parole. So these kind of things happen. What does that have to do with action is faster than reaction? I don't know, Dr. Fuller, but
well, he got his gun on you before you got your gun on him, I think is the point.
Didn't see it coming. Yeah.
Right. You didn't see he decided that the fight was on before you did. And frankly, that is going to be the case for the vast majority of civilian firearm usage and law enforcement usage for that matter. The concept of an ambush, the concept of getting the first shots off is very limited. Now, can it be done legally? Certainly it can be. You don't have to wait for somebody to pull a trigger before you can pull a trigger. But you're getting into some very, very, deep legal water when you decide to start the fight first. I mean, think about the incident you just related to us. Had you pulled your gun up and fired and killed him, what's going to happen? Everyone's going to come over and go, Brown just shot Parker or whatever his name is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he put his gun at me first. Did he?
Exactly.
Did he? So now you're going to go into trial and it's going to be your word against the dead guy.
Yeah.
So these are considerations that you need to have after the fact. Obviously you have to survive the incident for it to be relevant. Mm-hmm. Right? If you don't survive the incident, if you don't prevail, then everything else is not your problem. But you need to keep in mind that the bad guy gets to decide, generally speaking, when the fight starts. So plan accordingly. Plan to not be there when he starts the fight. Plan to avoid it. And then we talk about it on the show all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I had this, we have our Sunday fight club, and my son-in-law was saying, yeah, but it seems like the best strategy is just to not be in one of these. I'm like, bingo.
Yeah. I mean, the example I would use would be, Mike Seeklander. If I'm going to try and fight Mike Seeklander with a gun and he's armed as well, then the only chance I have is to get my gun out and start shooting before he does. Because if he initiates the fight, I'm probably far enough behind the power curve at that point that I'm going to lose. Because you can't give a guy like him a half a second jump on you, a full second jump on you. You just can't. You'll never recover. And the only safe thing to do is assume that that's the case when you run into Skittles in a parking lot.
Yeah. Number 4, be absolutely sure of your target before you pull the trigger. Yeah, I think, which is why if somebody said, hey, Rich, you can have a red dot sight on your handgun or you can have a light, I'm taking the light every day because it's more important for me to positively identify my target, what's around it and beyond it, than it is to have a little shiny red dot on the threat. What do you think?
I agree. And keep in mind that is a rule that does not necessarily apply to your opponent.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Bad guys are far less concerned about backdrop and shooting the wrong person than we are. But you absolutely need to, because one, you want to stop the fight, and shooting the wrong thing, shooting someone that doesn't need to be shot, shooting something that doesn't need to be shot, lengthens the fight, puts more bullets in the air, puts more people at risk, including yourself. So you want to be certain of what you're shooting at and you want to hit what you're shooting at. But it's also important for post-fight legal entanglements that you're going to find yourself in. So you want to make sure that you can identify what you're shooting, identify the fact that it needs to be shot, and then put the rounds where they need to go.
No, I absolutely agree with you, man. And number 5, shoot from behind cover if available. And of course, knowing the difference between cover and concealment is incredibly important. Get to hard cover and stay there until the threat stops. Of course, don't fall in love with your cover. You may need to keep moving and maneuvering as the threat, because the threat gets a vote. They might be maneuvering on you, but I think one of the shows I'm most proud of the entire suite of hundreds of shows that I've been involved with thus far is probably the one you and I did with Vehicle CQB.
It's a good show.
It's got thousands and thousands of listens and hundreds of views on YouTube. Our YouTube channel, somewhat unknown, which is fine. I don't care. But my point is, we show the 2 Green Berets that get attacked by that Jordanian guy. The first 2 get smoked. They never get a chance to even open the door on the vehicle. They get killed while they're sitting there. The other 2 in the vehicle behind it jump out and they run to Jersey barriers and fight from those Jersey barriers. That's a good piece of cover. And they do move from barrier to barrier, as you recall, because we showed it in our video. If you haven't seen the video, please go back and watch it, because it's fantastic. You really brought it that show.
As did you, sir. I think it also underscores a lot of things, that video, not the least of which is training. You want to shoot from behind cover, but get training about how to properly use cover. These guys, the first 2 that died didn't know they were in a fight. Right. And they were defeated by someone who I would argue had far less training and experience than they did. Now, the 2 remaining soldiers prevailed because they were trained, they were experienced, they knew how to fight this fight. And correct me if I'm wrong, they were armed with handguns. Bad guy had a long gun.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly.
That's a very lopsided fight. It's a very lopsided fight,
and they don't know if it's just an accidental blue on blue. So they're trying to communicate with the guy, hey, ceasefire. And
is it one guy? That takes time. All of this takes time. Now the cover gives you that luxury of time, buys you time. Distance buys you time. Had that fight been the other way around, had the bad guy had a handgun and the good guys had long guns, I would suggest it would be a much shorter fight.
Yeah.
But the training is critical. It really is. You recall the day in Dallas when they lost 5 officers. We've talked about this before. There's a video of one of the officers who's behind a pillar. And the bad guy obviously had training, because he leans out behind his pillar, puts a few rounds down range. Good guy ducks behind his pillar and then comes back out on the same side. Well, the bad guy flanked him. He put rounds around the left side of the pillar, and then he ran around the right side of the pillar. Good guy never saw it coming, and he's looking at 12 o'clock and he gets hit from 9 o'clock. And that's the end of that.
In the back, I was an former Army soldier, I believe.
That's training. And training and experience count for an awful, awful lot, folks.
And that goes into number 6 incredibly well. Shoot on the move, shoot then move then shoot. Practice it. Static shooting will get you killed. Save that for target shooting and plinking. I mean, all the lessons can be learned on a flat range, but you need to train on a flat range where they allow you to move from positions of cover. And then you need to take it and compete with it, because there's as you know, Dr. Fleur is a competitive shooter. There's a hell of a lot of moving in the competitive circuits. There
are. And I will tell you, I've shot on the move in competition because it was required by stage design. I've shot on the move in practice for competition. I've shot on the move in combat, but never with an expectation that I was going to hit anything. I was just poking holes in the air, making noise, and trying to keep people, make their life more difficult to shoot at me. Because accurate fire when you're at a dead sprint and terrorized and just terrified for your life is very, very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Doing the Groucho Marx walk into oncoming fire, that sounds good. I'm not going to sign up for that. If I'm moving and I'm exposed and you're shooting at me, I'm moving as fast as my little feetsies will carry me. I may throw some rounds willy-nilly at you, but that's also in a combat zone. I'd be much, much less inclined to do so domestically. But again, training. Get some training. And shooting on the move, moving then shooting is an absolutely valuable skill set. But I will tell you from my experience, accurate fire whilst moving and being shot at it's beyond my skill set.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're right. We train on it. In full disclosure, your old pal Rich Brown ain't never been in a gunfight. Nope. Let's get that out of the way right now.
If you don't count artillery.
Thank you. Yeah. Killing with a radio. Killing with a radio is much more gentlemanly, Dr. Fuller.
It adds a declasse approach to what would otherwise be a vulgar brawl. Let's be honest.
Right. It has a certain panache. Yeah, and I was listening to somebody, I think I've had Pete Blaber on the show before. It was the Delta commander in a lot of really amazing fights and started JSOC's AFO program, just a fantastic guy. But he was on a show recently and he's like, what's a CCT guy doing shooting right now? He's a CCT guy needs to be on the freaking radio. And, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah, but I think it's very important to learn lessons from those guys, but it's also important, I think, to remember your individual skill set as a listener to the show. If you're a former JSOC guy or current, Delta operator, that's awesome. You possess a skill set and a physicality that 99.999% of us do not have.
Yep.
In your case, Rich, in my case, I don't think I'm speaking out of school and saying that we will never achieve that level of athleticism and skill set in the time we have left on this planet. So if you are making these decisions and you're training folks, train for the situation you're in, right? It may be fun to go to gun camp and pretend you're a Delta operator, but you want to plan realistically and in accordance with your capabilities where you are today. Now, if you get better, you lose 50 pounds, whatever it is, reassess your plan. But don't make a plan. Go ahead.
What's interesting about the Delta thing is, and I've heard this from Max Planka and some friends of mine that have trained that special mission unit there at Fort Bragg. The average Delta operator is probably a B-class shooter. Maybe there's some A-class shooters among them. So you, me, and some of the folks watching might be able to outshoot them. But my point is they are that level in scuba. They are that level in probably grandmasters in skydiving. They are that way with lockpicking and driving. And they are an A-class or grandmaster level in so many different domains. And that truly is what sets those guys apart. Plus, they have the mindset. And one of my buddies was like, there was a former recce guy with CAG. He's like, what they're looking for? Because I'm like, what are they looking for? What's the psychology? He goes, I'll tell you what, the one thing. And that is I look at Rich Brown and I put a bullet right there in your forehead and I'll move on like nothing happened. And part of that is subconscious competence, and that's to your thing. You may have shot that 15-year-old kid in Afghanistan at a subconscious competence level and just keep moving. And only in retrospect is it harmful to you, because in the moment it's a threat. I'm addressing it and moving, and that's it. You know, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you on that one.
No, that's a good point. I mean, the immediate consideration after that was he's not alone. And I think that's another point regarding your Delta operators is they may be a B-class shooter, but there's a whole bunch of them coming at you.
Oh, yeah.
It's a B-class shooter backed up by a half a dozen B-class shooters, and all of them with a mindset of, if you shoot me, you'd better kill me, because if you don't, I will continue to administer my B-class shooting skills on you until one of us is out of the fight. And then the guy behind me is going to do the same thing. The guy behind him is going to do the same thing. And they'll step over my still twitching body to get to you. And that's a mindset that, you know, it sounds glib and it sounds easy to roll off the tongue here in this setting. It's a whole different animal when bullets are flying around on a two-way range.
And they've got, I mean, and then they're going to stick a canine on you, right. Or robots and drones, and then a health, you know, their attached CCT guy's going to send a fucking hellfire up your ass. I mean, they're
trained and they're determined, and that counts for an awful lot. Lot. I mean, think about baseball. If you were a 80% hitter or a 70% hitter, a B class or a C class, you're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
All day long. All day long. I mean, a 300 batter is, everybody knows who those guys are. A 350 batter, oh my God. Few and far between. So if you're a B class shooter in a combat situation, you know, and I talk about it in my book that, you know, the combat situations that I found myself in after I had trained for competition shooting really came across as simple. I mean, I even it occurred to me in the moment that, wow, if I was at nationals and they pulled this, I'd be mad. I'd be upset that they made this is a national level competition. This is the level of complexity you're sending me, is guys coming out a door right at me.
Yeah.
You know, so training makes a difference. And these guys have that training in spades, and they have the mindset. They're selected for the mindset, and they're trained and trained and trained and trained.
Mm-hmm.
Mess with them if you will.
Yeah, at your own freaking peril, my friend. Don't turn your back on a threat. Seems pretty obvious here. I don't know how much we need to go into that.
Well, it's funny. You watch the videos, and we train a lot for backing up, right? The toe heel back up, the reverse Groucho walk with handguns. You see that a lot in competition. But when you watch the training or the actual videos from gunfights, what do you see? When guns come out, what do the cops do? It's usually a traffic stop. Guy in the driver's seat decides today's the day he's going to fight. What does the cop do? They don't tend to turn their back, but they turn sideways. And if they backpedal, what happens? Ass over tea kettle almost every time. They fall because they're trying to move faster than they can, because they just want to get the hell out of there. Yeah. The ones who successfully retreat angle their bodies. They go oblique. They can still, you know, have a shoulder pointed at the bad guy, usually clawing their own gun out of the holster, but that's how they can move faster and get out of there. What you don't want to do is, as point 7 says, you don't want to turn your back on, because now they're invisible.
Yeah.
You have a mental picture of where they are, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be there. So
yeah.
Turning your back is a bad idea.
Great point. Don Bothwell is on. So sorry to late this morning. Good morning from northwestern Montana. Good morning, Don. So glad to have you. Dr. Gordon Botson is on, and he says he is coin number 1688 up there in Ohio. Yeah, I tell you what, man, you know what we need to do? Like, everybody works on running a build drill, and you should, but we see so many, count the number of times you see a backpedaling build drill being run. Or a lateral build drill. And those are the ones that tend to succeed more than the backpedaling build drill. Because like you said, they're going to trip over a skateboard. They're going to backpedal into traffic. You can watch some videos of cops that win gunfights. And as they're shooting, they're checking to clear traffic and then, you know, going across. I mean, I had a friend of mine who, when I was a police officer, he got so threat focused, he runs right across a road without clear traffic and got hit by a car, and both legs broke. I mean, he was in bad shape for a while. He survived, but I mean, you can do that, right? You get that tunnel vision.
Oh, absolutely.
I see the threat. I'm going. I'm going to help this officer, and bam! Now you're a liability.
Right. And imagine what happens now. Bad guy, if he takes out the first guy, now you're laying in the road with 2 broken legs.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's a mobility kill, as we said.
Thank God I was not there on that instance. I was off that day, but which is kind of leads into number 8, keep your eyes on the threat. But again, don't get so target focused that, you're look at the monkey, look at the monkey, look at the money, because like you said, with the kid in Afghanistan, once he was no longer a threat, it's automatically, the aperture opens and this kid ain't alone. I'm sure he's here with somebody.
Yeah, you have to. And again, I keep harping on this. This is where training and experience come into play. It really does. It's very easy for you to become target focused. I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed bank robbery victims who couldn't tell me if the guy holding the gun was purple, 10 feet tall, 1 foot tall, green, polka dot, had no idea what he was wearing, but could describe that gun. They absolutely could describe that gun because they're so target focused and they're untrained.
Yeah.
Right? They're not trained to look at things beyond it. And let's face it, a gun pointed at you is an attention getter.
Oh, yeah.
It commands attention. So I understand it, but you don't have to live with it, right? You can break that paradigm with training. So get the training.
And we talked about this. I wrote an article about it. Like, if you need to open up your aperture and you're dealing with a threat in front of you who's intent, like he's pissed off, he's coming, he's focused on you, but you can move laterally to find out what's behind you. You don't have to turn your back on the threat and look over your shoulder to see if he's got a buddy coming. Just move from the 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and that spins your environment. You get to see what's around you. So there's a lot of ways to do this. But what you don't want to do is take your eyes off of them, and you don't want to get so target fixated on it that you lose situational awareness to everything else. I mean, how many videos, Dr. Fuller, are there of guys winning the fight only to get sucker kicked in the head by his buddy? You know what I mean?
Remember the incident, was it Vegas a few years ago with in Target, where a concerned citizen with a CCW intervened on a active shooter and was engaging one shooter, didn't realize there was a second shooter flanked him and killed him.
That guy's name was Joseph Wilcox, if I remember correctly. And it's so tragic because 99% of the time he maneuvered around the woman who was pushing we call him a buggy here in Tennessee. I don't know what you call it, shopping cart. But he maneuvers around the woman, not knowing that she's with him, to engage her husband, boyfriend, whatever this piece of shit was, only to be shot in the back and killed by her. And I don't think we do enough to celebrate what that young man tried to do. Because if you watch, he's in line to return something. I think it was at a Walmart. I could be wrong. He's in line to return something, and I saw the video of him. He hears the shots, and he looks at his buddy like, "Oh shit!" And kind of jumps up and down, excited, and you see him kind of like touch his waist, like, "Oh my God, I've got a gun!" And here, you could see this young man processing all this information, and he runs out to the sound of the guns to put this scumbag down. I think they just executed some police officers. Mm-hmm. Who were just having lunch and then went to the Walmart to continue their killing spree. And it's so terrible because, any one of us could do that. We see a woman pushing a shopping cart. Oh, I got to save the woman. I run around her and she kills you in the back.
Yeah. And now that we're telling us right now, what were the secondary effects that his actions had on them? Did he slow them down a little bit? Did he save lives and sacrifice simply by having an impact on them? I don't know. Hard to say, but
I think they did, because they ended up, after that, they retreated to the back of the store and were kind of out of it from there.
Yeah. And at that point, they've got to be thinking, how many other people are like him out here? Mm-hmm. How many other folks in plain clothes are here with guns? Becomes a concern.
When we had
to the point of training, last thing I'll harp on it for this point. These things impact the bad guys too, right? The bad guys get target fixated. The bad guys don't know how to use cover. The bad guys will tend to turn their backs on the threat unless they have experience that has taught them otherwise. They don't tend to be as well trained as you can be, right? Because Skittles in the Hood isn't going to gun sight, right? He's not going to the American Warrior Society and joining up. He's not, having Mike Seeklander and Rich Brown come out and provide him training. He's not doing all that. So these are huge advantages that you can take and incorporate into your defensive thought processes and schemes. If you choose to. If you just go out and buy a gun and say, I'm ready to fight, it's like buying a piano and saying, I'm ready to play a concert. It's just not the case. So you can get ahead of the game before it ever starts, if you choose to.
No, great point. And Joseph's comment here, Joseph is watching us on YouTube. He says case law mandates a certain type of training, but you rarely see it for the line level patrol officer. And this is something that one of the guys I train with, he's a retired police officer, current probation officer, and a DT instructor trainer in multiple levels. Really good guy, great grappler, and very fit. And my son-in-law is like, wow, man, are all cops, I have a new respect for them because of this level of ability, skills and ability. I'm like, no. What he and I are doing, this is not your average cop. That you're the 80% bell curve of officers probably haven't done anything other than whatever DT they got in service and what they got at the academy. They spend their off time playing with their kids on the church softball league or golfing or bass fishing. I don't know what they do, but they don't take this seriously. They don't live this lifestyle. I don't understand why not, but that's my experience. What would you say?
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. And it's funny. The average person will train harder to get that little plastic cup at a competition than a cop will train to save their own life. And it's a rock that I pushed uphill for 20 years in the FBI, trying to get people to come out. I know you've pushed that rock uphill. It's really a shame because, it literally will save your life. Maybe you never have to use it. Maybe you do an entire career and it never becomes a thing. And that's great. I have fire extinguishers that I've had to replace in my cars and my houses because they've expired because I've never used them. And that's awesome. That's money I'll spend all day long. But should the flag fly? Nothing beats that. Mm-hmm. And to Joseph's point, this is an argument I had for 20 years, is we give all kinds of specialized in-depth gunfighting training to SWAT guys and to the protective details for the director and the attorney general. And the same thing happens in the local law enforcement, right? The SWAT guys get all the high-speed gunfighting training. Well, who ends up in the gunfight that necessitates SWAT to show up? Mm-hmm. It's the patrol officer. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, do SWAT guys, when they hit a house, do they need to be properly trained? Of course. But witness North Hollywood bank robbery.
Yeah.
Right? The first officers on scene were not the SWAT guys. And the first guys getting pummeled and shot up and torn up were the patrol officers because they were there. And then none of them had patrol rifles until after that incident. Classic example of closing the barn door after the cows have already escaped, right?
Right.
Or cows or sheep or alpacas or whatever you people keep in barns. I don't know.
But you people, hold up.
What do you mean, you people? But you understand what I'm saying? We don't tend to push the training down to the level it needs to be pushed down to. And if you make it optional, cops are cops, right?
Yeah.
FBI agents were hysterical to me because they would get that high-speed Glock pistol that was issued to them, and they'd put it in that high-speed holster that was issued to them, and they'd go out and buy Docker's pants that came with its own cloth belt and hang that gun on there.
Oh.
That freaking thing would bounce from their knees to their armpits when they ran. But if the FBI wanted me to have a good belt, they'd give it to me. For the love of God, really?
Yeah, that just blows my freaking mind. Got John Shriver on from Yukon, Oklahoma. Alan Kelly says, running late, honey-do list. Good morning, gents. Coin number 1571 from Occupied, Virginia. He says, Alan also says, during simunitions, me being the bad guy, I get hit in my hands and gun due to tunnel vision on the trainee. Man, how many times have I dug simunition rounds out of my knuckles? Mm-hmm. I'm serious as a heartbeat. What about you, Dr.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it was notable one time when I got shot in the forehead. Mm-hmm. And it skipped through because every other time I'd been hitting the hands. I was like, "Well, look at that!" And of course, it was the third round. He fired 2 into my hands and 1 into.
Yeah.
And I don't think the gun recoiled enough to excuse that. I think it was just I've been watching so many movies and I know the gun should climb, so I'm going to stitch you right up the chest.
Yeah, that's a real thing, man. This is an interesting one. Tony says, not breaking the 180 rule is a training scar. Your thoughts? I'll throw it to you, Dr. Fuller.
Yeah, and it's true. But it's hard to do because if you're going to train to look around, you've got to go into a shoot house or you've got to do it dry fire. And that's one of the many limitations that we have to operate under on a square range. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about police qualification courses. They have zero to do with gunfighting. Mm-hmm. Zero. They have everything to do with administrative purity, making sure you can get the gun out of the holster and put it back in the holster. And with checking the block, because there's a Supreme Court ruling that says that you must be trained in firearms to carry a firearm as a law enforcement officer. That's as deep as it goes. You have to have the training. Does not define the training. And of course, if you look at the training that's out there for various agencies, you will see a wild swing from outstanding to horrid. When I was in Vermont, for example, and this is 25-year-old information, so I don't feel like I'm tattletaling on anybody, but this Vermont State Police had a 36-round qualification course. And every year, every state trooper got 36 bullets from the state. That was it. They would go out and they would shoot their 36-round qual. They'd give them a box of ammo, shoot your qual, and give me the 14 rounds back that you didn't shoot.
Jeez.
And so, I was like Santa Claus. If I rolled into a state trooper barracks someplace or a PD someplace, the coin of the realm for me was always a case of ammo. I'd roll in and we'd be talking about a case. And we were, hey, I bought you a case of rounds. The FBI, 500 rounds. What? That's not even a rounding error.
That's right.
But you want to talk about, life-changing impact in a 3-man PD in, BF nowhere, Vermont. Oh my God. I gave a couple thousand rounds to a state trooper barracks one time. And, I think the FBI is still reaping the benefits of that donation because it makes such a huge difference. Now, other departments look at LAPD. What's their qualification course like? It's fantastic. So square range training only gets you so far, folks.
That's true. And he's got a great point. Don says, in training with both dismounted troops and with armored crews, I found that 2 things got them killed the quickest: bloodlust and tunnel vision. Once someone engages a target, everyone would turn to that target and want to get their rounds on as well. While they were doing that, they forgot their sector of fire and got unpleasantly surprised. The tunnel vision is just that, hyper focus on a single specific target. Well said, Mr. Bothwell.
And that's exactly why I think infantry tactics are as simplistic as they are, right? You take 2 squads and we're going to attack hill 1, 2, 3. You're going to put one squad on a line and tell everybody shoot that hill. You can take the other squad and go, okay, you run off to the left, follow that NCO, and when you get parallel with it, you're going to turn 90 degrees. You're going to give us a signal, and you're going to charge straight over the top of us. What's the first squad do? You're going to lift and shift, right? You're going to shift your fire. Now shoot over to the right of the hill because our guys are coming from the left. And that still gets screwed up. Because bloodlust, 18-year-olds being led by 23-year-olds.
That's right.
If you start doing anything overly complex, it becomes very, very difficult to do and to control.
Bruce is one of the best trainings I ever did was Warrior Camp, and that is a strong endorsement. I really appreciate that. Bruce has been to a lot of training. And we got Warrior Camp coming up November the 17th to the 21st. It's going to be this year. The focus is high-risk environment course. And Dr. Fuller and I are talking about some things that we're going to incorporate this year. And some people are like, hey, it's expensive. I get it. It's not cheap. And it's going to be an investment of your time as well as putting a week aside from everything and coming out and training. And Mike and I used to help Mike teach a flying armed course to some government guys that needed to be able to counter hijack aircraft. And you look at the cost of the course, like this is crazy expensive. Well, what's crazy expensive is that we go and rent a giant aircraft. You know how many thousands and thousands of dollars it costs us to rent I forget what it was, a 777, whatever it was, to sit it on the tarmac for a few hours so that you can play in this aircraft and get accustomed to what a real aircraft looks like. We could have been easily just put some shit on the ground and make people do it. But putting you in that real world environment and pressure testing and pushing you and your skills and abilities and giving you the tools necessary is what we have always tried to do at the highest level. So what's coming up this fall is going to be maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity because I don't need the money. You and I are of a certain age and have done certain things in our life I do this as a means to give back, but I also have to cover my expenses, which is why we do charge what we charge.
No, you're not looking to lose money in the process. And frankly, objectively, is the cost high? It may be a difficult check to write, but in my mind, it's absolutely in keeping with, or even lower than current rates. It's certainly lower than what I would charge you. And, I don't talk about my rates too much, but I will tell you this: for what you're going to pay for a week of warrior camp, you would get less than a day of training with me one-on-one.
There you go.
Because of the way I have my business model set up. And you're getting, people not only who are at the top of their game professionally in this, these are people with actual experience doing these things you're going to be teaching you. It's just irreplaceable. And there's a lot of value added there. And, what price do you put on keeping yourself alive?
Yeah. It's a pretty high one for me, Dr. Miller.
That's right. I value myself quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I hope to see people there. I think it'll be a really valuable course. I mean, I'm blocking off a week to do it. So,
well, we're half full already, and we still got 16 weeks to go. So if you're considering it, you better move rather rapidly. We filled up the first 10 seats in probably 2 weeks. So get on it, folks. Don't hesitate. Hesitation kills. Hesitation is your enemy, but so is shooting too fast. So there's a balance between speed and accuracy. Who knew, Dr. Fuller?
Who knew? Somebody should write that down. There's a great quote from John Wayne's last movie where he talks about, a lot of men will hesitate in that moment and I won't. And that makes a huge, huge difference. Mm-hmm. I look at my own approach to things. And when I was in law enforcement, my mindset was, draw your weapon, get to cover if I had to, and start giving commands. Drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun. Now that I'm a civilian, my mindset has shifted on that. I'll give commands if I need to, but my gun's not coming out nearly as fast as it would when I was in the FBI. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, my gun would come out and basically be an exclamation point to the commands I was going to give you. Now that I'm a civilian, my ability to issue lawful commands are much, much lower. So my legal protections for drawing my weapon are much, much lower. So if my gun's coming out, odds are very, very good that it's getting fired. Mm-hmm. And short of that gun's probably not coming out of the holster. Now, I will say that there's certainly a possibility that I could end up splitting that difference where, the gun needs to come out, but I'm not shooting right this second. But if my gun comes out now as a civilian, we're already 2 or 3 pounds off a 5-pound trigger.
Sure.
We're really far down that road. Otherwise, that gun's not coming out. I'm just running away. I'm fleeing. Gotta go.
Yeah, my grandfather, he was getting robbed one time, and he was down in a watermelon patch in Florida. He was a produce, I don't know what you call him, produce wholesaler, I guess. And so he would go down there, and so these guys are robbing him. And he had my memo there, and my dad was a little boy, and he said, my mema's nickname was Toad. Toad, get the boy and get in the truck. So she gets up in there, and there are guys surrounding him, and they're telling him they're going to rape her and rape the boy and take the truck, sell the parts, all the explaining what they're going to do to him. And my grandfather sticks his hands down his bib overalls and says, well, you fellas might do all you say you're going to do, but for 5 of you, this is the end of the road. 5 of you would be laying in this damn field right now. And that was enough to get them to be like, whoa. He goes, because when this gun comes out, it's going to be smoking. Yeah. And that was immediately like backpedaling. He was dead serious. And
criminals, again, we've talked about it multiple times on this show. Criminals are not looking for a fight. They're looking for a victim.
Yes.
And they clearly failed the victim selection process that day.
Yeah.
You ever see The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Clint Eastwood movie? Classic spaghetti western.
I'm ashamed to say I have not. I'll fix it today.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for tuning in today. We really enjoyed having you on the show. All right. You got some Netflix homework to do there, boss.
Yes, sir.
There's a line in there. Eli Wallach plays the ugly. He plays the Hispanic guy. And a guy catches him in the bathtub. He's gonna kill him. And spoiler alert, right? Mm-hmm. And the guy starts, monologuing, this and that, and you this and you that, and he just smokes the guy out of the tub. He's got a handgun in the tub. The black powder gun going to work in the tub. I don't know, whatever. Right. But he utters a great line there. He says, "Look, when you come to shoot, shoot. Don't talk, shoot." The accuracy requirements of a gunfight, and again, we've talked about this before, are not they're not hard in terms of just raw accuracy. If you set these things up on a range, and we set it up and you shoot from innumerable number of gunfights we see, the pure accuracy requirements are not difficult. What's difficult is executing it in the compressed time frame that you have to do it and making the decisions to get to that point. So it's a very mental game. We talk about it all the time. Shooting's a mental game. Shooting's a mental game. Being able to make that mental leap from, oh boy, this isn't happening, to fire, reload, fire, whatever you're going to do, that's hard to do. But one thing you need to be able to do is iron out as many of those things as you can before the moment. Install the mental tripwires. If this happens, we're here. If this happens, we're here. If this happens, we're here. So that you don't hesitate, because that hesitation will kill you. It absolutely will kill you.
Yeah, I went shooting one time with a guy. Lost contact with him over the last 5 or 6 years, but he was a retired Marine gunnery sergeant, infantry guy, been in a lot of gunfights in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then he went to work for DOE as a courier, so he's protecting nuclear materials going up and down the highways. And he does some 3-gun shooting, pretty damn well at it. And so we go shooting, and he's like, I mean, just hoses the targets. And I'm like, bro, that's what is this? You know, I mean, you missed the A zone on almost all of them. And he's like, I don't give a shit. I'm putting, rounds on meat. And if I can do that the fastest, I'm probably going to win. I'm like, you're absolutely right, bro.
Yeah. It's funny. We talked earlier about, sort of the quality of the trainers that are out there. I had an opportunity one time long ago to do a weekend of one-on-one training with Dave Savigny. And older shooters might recall Dave was the wunderkind of the time. And we started out with doing some accuracy work, and I'm shooting the same distance, same ammo, same gun as Dave's shooting. And I'm right there with him. I'm keeping up with this guy. Now, Dave and I, interesting enough, started shooting competitively about the same time, like within a month of each other.
I know that.
Yeah. And both up in New England. That's where he was living the same time I was shooting at Smith & Wesson. But I'm feeling pretty good. I'm like, oh, I'm hanging with Dave Savigny. Look at me. Well, then he started to compress the time. And my groups started to widen. His did not. And I'm like, here's where we see. Then we started moving. My group started to widen some more. His did not. So this is where we're seeing the impact this has, and his willingness to jump that trigger. He would see a good enough sight picture and go to town. And I'd be looking for a perfect sight picture. So that was the day I learned, hey, maybe, perfection is the enemy of good enough. And I think that illustrates the point you're making right there. Getting around on meat makes a difference. Now, it has to be a meaningful one to finish the fight, but it takes a very, very hard dude to continue to fight when there are bullets coming at him. And it takes a really hard dude to take rounds on target and keep fighting. And happily, most of the people we find committing crimes are not made of that stern of stuff.
No, you're absolutely right. Great points. And Dave Savigny, we had him on the show years ago. I think Seeklander interviewed him, but we'll probably need to get him back on.
He's just down the road from me. He's up in northern Georgia, not too far.
Is he really?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Don says, my dad used to tell me that if you carry a weapon, you don't pull it unless you absolutely need to use it. When you do pull it, you don't put it away until the job is finished. Wise words.
Yeah. Bad guy gets to choose when the fight starts. You get to choose when it's over in a perfect world.
Yeah. Number 10. I don't know if we'll make them through all 20. We may have to save the rest of them and just work on this next week, because I don't want to rush some of these. I'm really enjoying the conversation. And thank you to the 20 folks watching us live. Number 10, don't give up your weapon. This is an interesting one to include here. It says, if someone other than a police officer tells you to drop your gun or give up your gun, don't. Be prepared to use it. If you give up your gun, you could die. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, a bad guy tells you to give up your gun, don't, obviously. When a cop tells you to give up the gun, if I've got a gun in my hand and a police officer shows up, I've already screwed up.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm putting it in my holster. And I've had this happen on a few occasions when I was in the FBI, where I was interacting with a uniformed officer. He's trying to figure out if I am who I say I am. And he would say things like, well, why don't you draw your weapon and put it over here? And I'm like, nope, not going to do it. I am not touching the gun. I will put my hands over my head, put them on whatever you want. You can come and take the gun away from me. I'm not touching it. I one time had an interaction with a police officer in the backyard of my foster mother's house. And I had my fanny pack, because those were cool at one time. Trust me. They're cooler than they are now, whatever. And it had my creds and my badge and my gun in it. And I'm in California. And police officers trying to figure out if I'm supposed to be where I am. And he's like, oh, you have your identification? I said, yeah, it's in my bag over there. They're, all right, why don't you grab it for me? I said, no. I was like 10 feet away. My gun's in that bag too. You feel free to search the bag, take the ID out of it, do what you need to do. I'm going to stay over here. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and put you in handcuffs while I do that. Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
really?
No problem. So he cuffed me up, and I stood there while he searched my bag, and and that was fine, because I'm like, I'm not going to touch that gun with a cop involved. Now, Skittles comes back there and tells me drop the gun. We're not having that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not happening. Because then I'm at his mercy. Right now, I've just limited my options. I've voluntarily restricted an option set that puts me in a position where he gets to make all the decisions as to my fate. And I'm simply not willing to do that with a criminal.
Yeah, I wrote about this in my book. I can't tell you. Probably, I don't know. It's not innumerable times, but probably a good 3 or 4 times in my younger days being a knucklehead, doing shit I probably shouldn't have been doing. I had cops pointing loaded guns at me. And you can survive it if you act appropriately. If you act inappropriately, you probably gonna be leaking when it's over. Shoot center mass, rule number 11. It's the largest area of the body. Save shooting the gun out of someone's hand from the movies. Yes, save shooting the gun out of someone's hand for the movies. Don't shoot the leg or the shoulder. Shoot center mass. The next best target is the head and then the pelvis. But first, shoot center mass. Thoughts?
And this speaks to a lot of things. One, you should be well trained enough with your handgun or whatever weapon you're using that you can hit what you're aiming at. Mm-hmm. That's not an ultimate goal. That's the ticket to ride. Right? Mm-hmm. You should not be on this bus at all if you can't hit what you're aiming at. Under some level of stress, I might point out. And 2, I would modify this to say shoot center of available mass.
Oh, very well said.
Because sometimes the bad guy uses cover just like you do. And if there's a leg or a foot sticking out, well, that's a mass, and center of available mass is just a smaller available mass. Mm-hmm. You ever see the movie The Way of the Gun?
Love that movie.
You love that movie. Well, at one point, James Caan shoots a guy in the foot.
Yep.
Right? Because that's the how much mass is available. The bottom third or 2/3 of the guy's foot. So he shoots him in the foot. But again, don't deliberately try to shoot to wound, right? We're shooting to stop. And I always love these arguments that people make. Why can't the police just shoot him in the leg? I'm like, have you ever tried to shoot a person?
Yeah.
It's hard enough to shoot a person who's actively resisting, actively trying to kill you. You're deciding, well, I'm just going to be selective about this and shoot him in the leg. And oh, by the way, what's the impact? Uh-huh. You shoot me in the leg and you shoot Rich Brown in the leg, you may get 2 very, very different reactions. Uh-huh. And that's if you hit, right? One, I may fall down screaming, call for mommy, and die. Rich may get mad, rip open his shirt, show you his EGA tattoo, and charge and bite your throat out. Right? You just don't know what the response is going to be. Uh-huh. So the most predictable way to stop somebody, the best odds you have of stopping somebody, is hit them in the thoracic cavity.
Agree. Which leads us into the next one, and that's ballistics and wound penetration. You wrote an excellent article on the AmericanWarriorSociety.com about the ballistic studies that you were involved in when you were at the FBI's Firearms Training Unit, famed Firearms Training Unit, if I might say. So, I mean, it's incredibly important. Ball ammo has its place, but it's not what I carry as my daily loadout when I'm walking around the Walmart watering hole. What about you?
I agree with you. And look, does the ammo I choose to carry in my gun matter in terms of where I'm trying to place rounds? No, it doesn't. Right? Whether I'm shooting ball ammo or I'm shooting hollow point, whether I'm shooting a shotgun slug or a 22 full metal jacket, I'm aiming for the same thing because I understand terminal ballistics. I understand anatomy well enough to know where I need to put a bullet. You should too, right? Ask a deer hunter where to shoot a deer. They all know. Mm-hmm. They all know. Ask a pig hunter, where do you shoot a pig? Ask an elephant hunter, where do you shoot an elephant? They know. Mm-hmm. You should know. If you are in a position where you think you're going to carry a firearm for self-defense, you should know what parts of the body that weapon is going to be effective on. Because the places on the body, no part of your body is designed to absorb a firearm round. Mm-hmm. Right? That's not how it's designed. But there are parts of your body that will suck those up better than others. And there's some of them that are absolutely catastrophic and some of them aren't. This is why you get people that are killed with a single round, and then you get people who are walking around today with 12 bullets in them.
Yep.
Shot placement is everything. And if you don't know where to put the shots, then you need to fix that.
Who is that has the tactical anatomy class right now that they're teaching?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Our good friend Will Parker went to that, spoke incredibly highly of it, a shooting course called Tactical Anatomy. It might be Dave Spalding. I could be mistaken. But yeah, I don't. This is shot placement is truly, truly, truly everything, and I don't even know that we can have a conversation. I saw this somewhere recently, the stopping power. I'm like, man, I thought we'd stop that shit in the 80s. Are we really still talking about this?
That drives me bonkers.
I understand you want to deliver as much kinetic energy to the threat as you can, but it's not just at the threat or to the threat. It's at the certain specific point on that threat. And yeah, I don't get it, because the intent is to stop what they're doing. So if that's the intent, it's not just put rounds on target, it's to stop their behavior, because their behavior is what's getting them shot. So what's the quickest way to do that? You know?
And we can go round and round about stopping power all day long, because that's a phrase that just drives me bonkers. And I know you know that.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's not in any way, shape, or form objective. But regardless, it's got to be where you put the round. It's no different than grappling and combatives, right? You can give me your arm, and if I try to put an arm bar on your bicep, it's worthless, right? I can do that all day long. My son will try that sometimes. He'll, I know this move, Dad. Wrong joint, wrong direction, son. Right? You've got to place the force in the right place, in the right location. And that's true of anything. If you want to compel a behavior with force, you have to execute that force in the right way. And understanding the target is the first step.
I think we're seeing it. You watch the shootings of today relative to back in the day. And back in the day, you would see 2 to 3 rounds and assess the threat. Now you see just mag dump until the threat goes down. And I mean, I get it. The bad guys are surviving less. Sorry, not my problem. Don't be a bad guy, I guess. But it was the same thing with like pepper spray. People, pepper spray don't work. If you do this like they train you in the academy, 1 second blast across the eye, then maybe it won't. But if you wet down their face, empty the can until they go on the ground like you're telling them to, I promise you it's going to be the greatest thing in the world.
I've always approached those pepper spray cans as a single-use container, right? I don't care how much is in there. It's a single-use container. It's a one-shot weapon.
And on this, he also talks about, like going to the ER doc and kind of finding in a big city and asking them what works. One of the guys that's coming to Warrior Camp this year, I think you may have met him before. I won't say his name, but he's a forensic pathologist. And he wrote
his wife last time, did he not?
Yep. And they're both coming again.
Oh, great.
Yeah, great people. But he's a forensic pathologist. He wrote a great article on AmericanWarriorSociety.com that you can read for free about all the wounds he's seen. And he includes pictures from the thousands and thousands of autopsies that he has done.
Yeah, he was a pathologist in a major U.S. city, a major violent U.S. city.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
he's forgotten more about wound ballistics than anybody will probably ever know. Tony says the Minnesota rep and his wife took 7 and 8 rounds and survived. Shot placement's key, folks. And with that, I think we probably need to end it, Dr. Fuller. Let's pick this conversation up next Monday. What do you say?
Absolutely. I will make myself available, sir. I'll do my best to make sure that I don't have any time conflicts, so we can spend as much time as your audience is willing to bear. Good. Well, thank you again to the 20 folks that are still watching us live. If you're interested in checking out the high risk environment course that we're going to be putting on, Dr. Fuller will be there. Get to spend a week with me, Mike Seeklin, or Justin Carroll, Will Parker, Dr. Fuller. It's going to be phenomenal, folks. And the other participants. I mean, the people that come to this are a wealth of knowledge in themselves. Absolutely. The pathologists we were just discussing. And you get to break bread and spend the week with them. We've got the Cedar Lodge booked. We got lunches are going to be served to you. Lots of stuff. Look forward to seeing and training with you down here in East Tennessee this fall. Until then, folks, the fight is coming. Right, Dr. Fuller? It is. Be ready.